Welcome to World Alert Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The news broke with a thunderclap. Saudi Arabia and China announced comprehensive nuclear energy partnership. It was a headline that instantly reverberated across every major capital, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and financial markets alike. The world watched, stunned, as two global heavyweights unveiled a partnership that would alter the very fabric of international relations. It was a geopolitical earthquake, the kind that redraws borders not on maps, but in the minds of leaders and strategists everywhere. The Middle East, long a chessboard for global powers, had just witnessed a move that no one could ignore. For decades, Saudi Arabia was the bedrock of American policy in the Middle East. The kingdom's oil wealth and strategic location made it Washington's most reliable partner, a linchpin in the architecture of American influence stretching from the Mediterranean to the Gulf. Now it had formally embraced Beijing for its most sensitive technological ambition, nuclear energy. This was not just a business deal, it was a bold pivot, a signal to the world that Riyadh was ready to chart its own course, even if it meant defying old alliances. The deal was framed as a peaceful energy project, but everyone knew it was more, a declaration of independence, a statement that Saudi Arabia would no longer be bound by the expectations of its traditional allies. This was a calculated move away from a 70-year-old alliance, Saudi oil for American security. The old bargain, which had shaped the region for generations, was unraveling before the world's eyes. That era is now officially over. The symbolism was unmistakable. The lowering of the American flag, the empty conference rooms, the sense of an ending that could not be reversed. Images from Riyadh showed Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the Chinese president smiling, co-authoring a new chapter in global history. Their handshake was more than ceremonial. It was a public declaration of a new world order taking shape. The implications were clear. This was a profound strategic realignment. Analysts scrambled to interpret the consequences, but one thing was certain. The balance of power was shifting, and fast. The Saudis no longer trust Washington as their exclusive security guarantor. They are building new partnerships, diversifying their alliances, and preparing for a future where American promises may no longer be enough. Years of American lectures on human rights and inconsistent Iran policy pushed Riyadh to hedge its bets. Frustration had been building, and the kingdom was no longer willing to wait for Washington to resolve its own contradictions. China offered technology and investment, no political strings attached. For Saudi Arabia, this was a refreshing change, a partner focused on progress, not politics, and willing to invest in the kingdom's vision for the future. The shockwaves hit Washington hardest. U.S. officials scrambled to respond, holding emergency meetings and issuing statements, but the sense of loss was palpable. The U.S.-Saudi relationship, once a cornerstone of American dominance, was shattered. Decades of shared interests and mutual dependence had come to an abrupt, dramatic end. The deal marks a failure of American diplomacy and a testament to China's patient, long-term strategy. While Washington debated, Beijing acted, quietly, persistently, and with a vision that is now paying off. Beijing has been quietly building relationships across the Middle East for years, and now it's cashing in. The Belt and Road Initiative, once seen as an economic project, has become a powerful tool of influence and leverage. The Desert Kingdom has a new partner, and the world has a new, far more complex geopolitical map. Old certainties have vanished, replaced by a landscape of shifting alliances and unpredictable outcomes. The U.S. is no longer the sole protagonist. Other powers are stepping onto the stage, each with their own ambitions and agendas, making the region more contested than ever before. The global order is shifting, and the consequences will be felt for decades. Every nation, every leader, must now rethink their strategies in a world where nothing can be taken for granted. The world just got a lot more complicated. The Saudi-China deal is only the beginning, a signal that the age of easy answers is over, and a new era of uncertainty has begun. For decades, the petrodollar system made the US dollar the undisputed king of global finance. This arrangement relied on Saudi Arabia selling its vast oil reserves exclusively in dollars, ensuring a steady demand for the American currency and cementing the U.S. economic dominance worldwide. But now that foundational guarantee has vanished, a seismic shift in the global financial order that is sending shockwaves through markets and governments alike. As America's attention shifted away from the Middle East, the Saudis felt increasingly vulnerable, watching U.S. troops depart and sensing a growing uncertainty about their own security. The trust that once defined the US-Saudi relationship began to erode, replaced by a colder, more transactional dynamic where mutual interests no longer guaranteed mutual loyalty. In response, Riyadh has adopted a bold new strategy, diversifying its alliances and refusing to rely on any single superpower for its future. By deepening economic and political ties with China and Russia, Saudi Arabia is signaling its determination to chart an independent path, forging partnerships that reflect its own interests. The kingdom is undergoing a dramatic transformation, evolving from a client state into a confident, independent global player with ambitions that reach far beyond oil. Ending exclusive dependence on the US is a monumental gamble, one that offers freedom from American pressure, but also means giving up the security umbrella that Washington once provided. The Crown Prince is betting that Saudi Arabia's growing economic power, combined with a web of new alliances, will be enough to ensure the kingdom's security and influence in an increasingly multipolar world. The long goodbye to the petrodollar is about more than just finance. It's a bold statement about the future world order the Saudis envision, one where they are no longer bound by old rules. The stakes couldn't be higher, as Riyadh's pivot east could reshape not just its own destiny, but the balance of power across the globe. The new era's most concrete sign: Saudi Arabia now accepts Chinese yuan for oil sales to China. This historic shift marks a turning point in global energy markets, signaling a move away from decades of dollar dominance in oil trade. This move strikes at the heart of the petrodollar system and sets a precedent for other oil exporters. For nearly half a century, oil transactions have been almost exclusively conducted in US dollars, reinforcing America's economic influence worldwide. By accepting yuan, Saudi Arabia legitimizes China's currency as a global reserve alternative. This not only boosts the yuan's credibility, but also encourages other nations to consider similar arrangements. China can now buy oil without converting to dollars, reducing its dependence on the US financial system. This gives China greater flexibility and shields it from potential US sanctions or financial pressures. The yuan for oil loop strengthens China's economic influence and gives Gulf nations a stake in Chinese assets. As trade deepens, financial ties between Asia and the Middle East grow stronger, reshaping global alliances. Riyadh and Moscow are also exploring trade in their own currencies, further bypassing the dollar. This trend is accelerating as more countries seek alternatives to the traditional dollar-based system. This cooperation creates a powerful bloc, independent of American interests. Together, these nations are forging new economic pathways that challenge the old order. For Saudi Arabia, these deals cement ties with China and give leverage over the US. The kingdom gains new options and bargaining power on the world stage. For China and Russia, it's a leap toward de-dollarization. Reducing reliance on the dollar helps insulate their economies from external shocks and political risks. The message is clear: the unipolar moment is over, power is shifting, and new centers of influence are emerging across the globe. A new, multipolar financial world is being born in the deserts of Arabia. The future of energy and finance is being rewritten, one deal at a time. Riyadh and Beijing's official line is peaceful nuclear energy, but Western intelligence is alarmed. The rumored deal includes a full fuel cycle, enrichment and reprocessing, key steps toward weapons capability. Saudi officials have long said they'd match Iran's nuclear ambitions. By partnering with China, Riyadh may bypass US non-proliferation restrictions. Pakistan's quiet involvement adds intrigue. Decades ago, Saudi money helped fund Pakistan's nuclear program. Now Chinese tech and Pakistani expertise could give the Saudis a credible path to a bomb. Officially, the program is for peaceful purposes, but the pursuit of a full fuel cycle gives Saudi Arabia nuclear ambiguity. Every move is scrutinized for hidden meaning. The world is on edge. For the US, the Saudi-China nuclear deal is a nightmare realized. The alliance with Saudi Arabia was a pillar of American power. Now, it's crumbling. America's key Arab partner turning to China for nuclear technology is a public humiliation. The deal challenges the US-led non-proliferation regime. China doesn't impose the same safeguards. By offering nuclear tech with fewer strings, Beijing undercuts global non-proliferation efforts. The Saudi-China-Russia axis forms a bloc that can challenge the US economically, diplomatically, and strategically. The Great Game is reborn, now for global dominance. Washington fears this is just the beginning. Other allies may follow Riyadh's lead. The Saudi deal is a crack in the American-led order. The fear it will spread, the world is watching. Saudi Arabia's nuclear ambition could ignite a regional arms race. Iran will almost certainly respond using the Saudi move to justify its own nuclear push. A tit-for-tat escalation could push the region to the brink of nuclear confrontation. Turkey, too, may feel compelled to pursue nuclear capabilities, adding another unpredictable player. Israel, the region's undeclared nuclear power, faces its nightmare scenario: multiple nuclear states in the Middle East. Israel may reconsider its defense posture, preemptive strikes, or a new reality of mutual assured destruction. The dominoes are lined up, and the first one has just been pushed. The stakes have never been higher. The Saudi-China deal triggered swift, predictable reactions. In Israel, grave concern: a Saudi nuclear program, even civilian, crosses a red line. The fear: a nuclear-armed Iran, then a nuclear-armed Saudi Arabia surrounding Israel with existential threats. In Tehran, public condemnation but private celebration. The deal justifies accelerating Iran's nuclear program. Europe is blindsided, caught between US allegiance and economic ties to China, urging diplomacy but lacking leverage. In Washington, anger and anxiety criticism from all sides, calls for sanctions, and a re-evaluation of the US-Saudi relationship. But America's options are limited. Punishing the Saudis too harshly could push them further into China and Russia's arms. The world's major players are making their own rules. The old order is slipping away. The Saudi-China nuclear deal is a tectonic shift in Middle Eastern geopolitics. The era of American unipolarity is over. The region is now a crowded arena of ambitious powers. Saudi Arabia, backed by China and aligned with Russia, challenges the old order. Iran and its proxies, Israel and Turkey, must adapt to a new, unpredictable reality. The Crown Prince seeks strategic autonomy, balancing great powers instead of relying on one. The result: a fragmented, volatile Middle East, where rivalries intensify and conflicts become more likely. The old system provided stability, the new one is a free-for-all. One miscalculation could spark catastrophe. The Saudi-China deal forces a hard question. Is this the dawn of a post-American Middle East? US dominance is over. It must now compete with China, Russia, and assertive regional powers. The global system is fracturing into competing blocs. The Saudi pivot is the most dramatic sign of this new multipolar world. Economic interdependence is now a tool of strategic competition. America's decline was not inevitable, but it was predictable: costly wars, inconsistent policies, and unreliable alliances. China played the long game, building economic leverage now converted into strategic influence. Power now flows from shipping containers and nuclear contracts, not just military might. The challenge for the US: adapt, lead through partnership, not dominance, in a Middle East that no longer answers only to Washington. The world has changed, and so must America.